current resources, help them walk through. They have social workers, guidance counselors, psychologists, teachers, special ed, and really work with them on their current crisis planning. We are recognizing since launching 24/7 in both Onondaga and Oswego County that there does need to be a specific targeted approach for the school system. So just a little aside, in Oswego County, part of our proposal to sustain and enhance our mobile crisis services is looking at specific school-based funding, which actually I think we just received I saw some funding coming down that may be available for school stuff that we may want to look at to have a targeted crisis consultant come into the schools, help them assess each school district. Each school has its own culture. Each school has its own resources, and then really identify how we can support them to be a crisis responder.
To Councilor Allen's point, though, I mean, obviously, there's a huge issue with the schools.
Yeah.
You know, and with the tragedies that have happened the last couple of days. So, is there any? Who's in charge of the initiative to like meld in any kind of issues that we might have with the school district that maybe you can help out? And is it something that, as a council, we go to the Board of Education and ask them to look at maybe
that would be
coordinating with
yes
you? Because I don't know what the current I don't know how many mental health professionals are in the school district, really.
Yes.
I imagine there's some, and I'm sure not every school is
equipped.
Right. And as situations in the past have happened, the school district has called SPD, and we all know how that turned out. So in this case, it seems like there should be some type of relationship where when it's needed, like outside help is needed, like you guys should be able to come there, because we know our guidance counselors, they're busy with their day-to-day work, and they like this isn't really their specialty, like not down talking their profession at all, but this isn't their specialty.
No, you're right. No, you're right. Yes, we definitely want to be able to expand and enhance our response in the school district. We just want to be strategic and mindful.
And when you're being strategic, let me ask you this question, because I don't know, you mentioned 988, and I sit on Contact's board. So I know that Contact has things in place within the school buildings. So I'm curious to know, do you talk to Contact? Do you work with Contact?
Yes, that's
in school-based programs?
We partner extremely close with Contact. They are our regional crisis triage provider. And so they will make referrals, or they'll call us in regards to any school issues or that sort of thing.
So when we do get referrals from a school building, it usually comes through Contact. They'll triage and determine mobile crisis might be helpful for this one. And then they directly connect us with the school. It's not the youth that you're seeing in the graph. There are a few that we've responded to in the school building. Most of these are happening after school hours, or kids that are not going to school, or we partner with the student resource officers to go to somebody's house. Like, I can't tell you how many times it's the guidance counselor received an email from a student with some suicidal ideation. They're not in school today. We will go to the home. As far as responding in the building, it is tough because every school has a different crisis plan or lack of crisis plan. And I think that that's actually a really great idea, is to get the district on board with a plan that works so that everybody knows what to expect when they're in a crisis.
We have our chair of our education committee here too. Maybe it's something that we should probably initiate as a council to try to like have some sort of formalized structure. The school reaches out for help.
Yeah.
And they have opera money, they can pay you.
That would be fabulous. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because our capacity would certainly
Thank you.
struggle if that was, we would definitely need to increase our capacity.
Well, it's interesting, just a little note, because I have been sharing this story. Last year, we received a call from one of our schools in Onondaga County, and they had implemented social emotional learning initiatives. And they had implemented a suicide rating scale, the Columbia Suicide Rating Scale, which we're familiar with. We use that as well. And what was happening is the school was assessing youth, and there was one initial question. If they said, yes, I have had thoughts, their plan was then sending those children to upstate for evaluation. So there was 200, in 2020, 200 kids from this one school district, 200 kids went to upstate. One of them, out of the 200, were admitted. So Upstate contacted that school and was like, something else needs to happen here. So that's when they had called us to consult. So we had just consulted, we had given some suggestions from them, and that was all I heard. But yes, school is needed to be advocated for crisis support, for sure.
So I have a question, just to reel this back in, so what we're voting on is going to be the 257, so that you folks who are so skilled can help our amazing police officers do their job better.
Correct.
All these school and everything else is
Separate
a
conversation.
different thing, and we'll consider a different time. For these purposes, okay. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you for that
Council,
clarification.
do you mind if the deputy chief can really talk to you about the relationship?
Yeah, like what it looks like and how it's gonna happen, how you're gonna, you can continue with your slides, but yeah.
Yep, absolutely. We'll have Tanya and Deputy Chief come up and share the achievements and the great partnership with SPD and the boots on the ground work. It's really amazing, and I'm really proud of the work that they've done. This is just a pie graph showing our utilization for time frame. So daytime is highly utilized, which is great. It just justifies the need for especially our 24/7 operation. This other pie chart, just one correction. The title says top 10 referral sources. This is top 5 referral sources. And Tanya and Deputy Chief will speak on our SPD referrals, but I do want to point out, bringing it back to Contact Community Services, in green, they're about 40%, but they also run 211, which is the blue piece of the pie, and yellow, Crisis Connects. So really, they make up 70% of our referral source, which makes sense because we've been working with them since 2015, and they have become our regional triage provider. Not only have we been able to work out the kinks and really become aligned and uniform, but we've been able to really develop a uniform tool to help us determine the most appropriate level of response. So we're speaking the same language, which is really great. And because of that development, we really recognize that, hey, let's get all of our crisis providers together and create a network, because we really all need to work together. Mobile, Contact gets a call, somebody's in crisis, they call us, and then we need additional support, like Helio Health's Cody team, right? Maybe having them help us, or CPEP. Somebody might just have been discharged from CPEP and we're being presented with them. We wanted a closer relationship. So I want to turn it over to Ms. Lyons to talk about the Central New York Crisis Network group that she has created. And thank you.
So I'll just briefly touch on the CNY Crisis Network before we can dive into the nitty-gritty with SPD. So we developed this network of crisis providers in our area. It consists of us. As you know, CPEP has a mobile crisis team as well. Helio Health and their Cody team, which is
Wait, CPEP has a mobile crisis team?
They do, but it's embedded within the CPEP program. So in order to be considered a CPEP, you have to have a mobile crisis team. Their mobile crisis team operates just a little bit different than ours. They do scheduled follow-ups for discharges after someone's released from CPEP.
They don't hit the ground.
They will once in a while. They will. But we can go back and forth. So let's say we get a call and somebody was just discharged from CPEP. Maybe we're overloaded on that day. We have 12 back-to-back calls. We can call them and say, hey, do you have availability to go see this person since you know them? So they will go in a moment's notice occasionally, but it's mostly scheduled follow-up calls. So Helio is part of that. They have a Cody team, which is a boots on the ground team as well, that deals with primarily substance use issues. We deal with both, but if it's a primary substance use issue, we may call on them for some of their expertise as well. The county participates in our CNY network meeting. We meet twice a month, and we just develop a framework for how the community can expect a consistent response from the crisis network team. So I think we should probably move on to talking about Syracuse city responses. If you want to tackle this together.
Sure.
I have some data that is in front of you guys. In 2021, we had a total of 160 co-responses. 34 of those were initiated by us to them. I know one of your questions was what happens when a mental health emergency turns into a police matter. The rest of them were initiated by SPD. And so far this year in the first quarter, we've had 23 co-responses, 18 initiated by SPD. So I just wanted to point out that from first quarter of 2021 to first quarter of 2022, we've had a 157% increase in referrals from SPD.
Great. Just speaking from Deputy Chief Rich Trudell, Syracuse Police. Just speaking from the side of the Syracuse Police Department, person in crisis calls or mental health calls, we call them person in crisis calls.
One
Yes?
quickie. Could y'all move away from him so he could take his mask off?
I can't take my mask off. COVID hit me at the wrong time, so I'm in the
keep it on.
5-day,
he's
I'm not
okay.
positive, I'm in the 5-day where I gotta wear my mask. So everybody just relax, all right?
COVID crisis.
I'll speak up so you can hear me, but I can't take the mask off. I apologize. So mental health calls or person in crisis calls are definitely one of the most dangerous calls that we can respond to, both for the person that's in crisis, civilians in the area, and for police officers. To have Liberty Resources as a resource for us, along with CIT training and de-escalation techniques, is really important. So last year, starting in January, we got into a relationship with Liberty Resources where on an on-call basis. And in March, we solidified that into an MOU. So we've been operating under an MOU with Liberty Resources for over a year for on-call basis. Meaning when an officer gets on scene or a supervisor gets on scene on a person in crisis call, realizes what they have, give Liberty a call, and then they respond out in a co-response nature, provide us with their expertise. I have been on numerous calls where Liberty Resources gets on scene, is able to talk with the person that is either barricaded in their house, unwilling to go because it's going to be 20 degrees below zero, and unwilling to go to the hospital. And Liberty, through their training, has able to convince that person to do what they need to do in order to protect themselves. Where that's huge for us is we don't have to go to that next level of force, right? That's exactly what we want to avoid. Adding an officer to the equation with a gun has the potential for that. So we see this as the next step in first on call, now this 24/7, but this on-site 7-day-a-week type situation as the next step in diversionary where they respond to calls through the 911 center. So it's hugely important for us. I want to say how professional this organization is. There's been bumps in the road, and we have worked through those seamlessly. We've provided training to our officers. We've conducted co-training with our hostage negotiations team and Liberty Resources and worked through all of those. We've developed protocols for response. And what's so important in this, it's not just the initial response and those successful outcomes. It is law enforcement's ability to disengage from a situation that is escalating and allowing Liberty Resources to follow up day to day after that in order to draw a successful conclusion. So we definitely are mindful, and our supervisors, command staff are mindful of times when we have to disengage as law enforcement, allowing the professionals to follow up. So, I mean, I can go through a lot of successes in my own mind, but just want to let you know that they are there, and the number of times that we are calling them is increasing, as you can see, from January of 21 to January of 22, and it really is the next step in allowing law enforcement to take that maybe a secondary role to these non-law enforcement person in crisis calls for successful outcomes.
Are you guys still presenting? More stuff?
I mean, he pretty much covered the bulk of what we're here for. We just wanted to demonstrate a couple of things. On this chart, you'll see that most of our funding is from grants. As Teresa mentioned, some of that is ending very soon, which brings us in front of you guys today. And then you'll see our list of partnerships throughout Central New York. SPD and 911 highlighted there because they're paramount to this initiative happening right now.
Great. Well, I just want to say, if I could hop in first, one, thanks to Deputy Mayor Owens. I know we've had this conversation a dozen times. I just want to say thank you for continuing to advocate for this. Commissioner Collins, I know we've had this conversation before. This is something that's been, Tanya and I have walked around downtown. This is something that's been very important to me for a long time, and I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. My one comment I'd like to make, especially for our friends that are here in the media, the fact that you guys have steadily been grant funded is frustrating to me. And I will give my assessment very quickly. The city of Syracuse is very fortunate at the moment to have ARPA funding, which allows us to finally take initiatives. Often we in the city don't have the expendable budget to take initiatives. Typical years we end a few million short of what our projected budget is, and we have an overdraft, as it were, if it was a personal bank account. The county this year ended with a 135 million plus surplus. And during COVID, people always ask me why the mayor wasn't on TV every day talking about COVID, because city government and county government have different purviews. And there's certain things that fall under county government and certain things that fall under city government. And county government really is responsible for, we don't have a health department for the city. We don't have social services. We don't have these things. We can't get into that game. It'd be like I'm not an electrician, so I wouldn't try to do the electrical in my house. It would take me far too long to learn how to become an electrician rather than just call an electrician who can come and help. So I would just say to encourage our partners in county government, I've brought it up with my fellow county legislators multiple times to get secured funding for you guys for specifically have a dedicated team. And the reason I asked the questions about capacity is because if, like I'm sure my fellow counselors, when we talk to shop owners downtown, I know Councilor Hogan and I have been to meet with many shop owners downtown multiple times about the mental health problems of people, particularly, when you said only 4% of the calls you interact with are homeless and that you have the capacity to generally deal with your problems, I guess it's surprising to me because we always feel as counselors, the shop owners feeling like they have no one to call. They're not able, by the time they call 911, it's a 20, 30-minute response time or something like that. And by that time, the homeless person that has mental health issues has moved on to another person. So that, to me, is one of the biggest issues that not we as the city of Syracuse, but we as Onondaga County, as a region, need to address to stabilize our economy and our downtown and our city, is getting you guys in there and getting you the resources you need to do it. So I would just like to encourage our partners on the county legislature, the county executive, all our county partners to really consider putting a few million aside each year to fund this properly so we can deal with the homelessness, the mental health problems, the drug addictions in a humanitarian way where it does not impede on the freedom and the rights of our fellow citizens as well, with them having to feel these problems as well. So sorry for my speech, but it's my big hobby horse. I really want to see this be funded permanently, not with a grant, not a one-year pilot program or blah, 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 blah. I feel like we should have done this a long time ago because, again, when we talk about the last years with calling for more police accountability, one area where we have overlap between the activist movement and the officers, they'll all tell you the same thing. You can't use a hammer when you need a screwdriver. You can't send a policeman with a gun into a situation with someone that's having a mental health, drug addiction crisis. You need to use a screwdriver if you want to get that screw out. And you put the cops in a bad position, the person having the mental health crisis, all those around in a bad position. So it's really, for decades in America, we've been using the police as the only hammer we have to get every screw out of the wall. And we need to fund this rapidly, and I'm done making a speech. But I just want to say, please, for those that are listening, let's fund this permanently. And I appreciate Deputy Mayor Owens and Commissioner Collins for pushing this forward and always advocating and pushing for this.
Back on top of you, Counselor, I think that we need to get the state, as she said, about the insurance reimbursement. We need to get the state hearing us and reimburse you on this insurance.
How are you handling calls that are coming to people that don't speak English?
We use language line interpreters. We have a couple of bilingual people on our team, not nearly enough. And SPD also has a few, well, actually, several officers that speak several languages, so if we have to use them, we do that as well, but we do have an interpreter. It's just that it's usually over the phone, so it adds an element of trickiness to the call out, but we have done it.
The other thing, Counselor, for this particular relationship, it gives us some flexibility to kind of look at some other approaches. I was explaining to the Liberty team what we do with community navigators. And so we're going to take a dab on look at, that approach from community stakeholders that maybe have gone through the same experience that could possibly also assist the team in helping. When you have a peer talking to you about it's going to be okay, let's go get your help.
Right.
That helps this team.
Yeah, we recently met with the Neighborhood Ambassador Group, so, yes.
Good, because I was thinking that as you were
Yeah.
talking, because we do have those navigators out here.
Yeah, so we're actually really excited for that new collaboration.
Cool.
And just, Councilor Driscoll, I agree with you. I do want to say that every step of the way, Jen Pomerly, representing the county, has been with me all along. What you just declared would help her. We're all headed towards that mountain that we know that this is expensive, but we know it's needed. And so as a community, we're proving that this methodology works. We're going to prove it to another level when we collectively, the county and us, and it is Contact that is going to be the company that's going to go into the 911 center.
Okay.
We're putting all the pieces together and then going to get that huge sticker shock at the end of it. But it's okay. We know it's going to work. We'll take it.
One of the finest phone calls we had, Deputy Mayor, was about a year, maybe 3 quarters ago.
Okay.
When I told you about Eugene, Oregon.
Yes.
Embedded mental health professionals in the police department, and you said you were already working on it.
We're already doing it.
And I was so impressed because what Council Driscoll says, we worry about funding. We always worry about funding, and I've been a counselor a long time, and the city's always strapped for funding. But that positive action, addressing a problem that's been exacerbated by COVID and everything else, is something we need to address.
And another thing about the police department, the crisis intervention training that the officers receive, initially we used to do it with a consultant. And then that consultant told us, we only do it if the person's been on the force for 5 years. Well, First Deputy Chief Cecil and myself said, that's ridiculous. Everyone should get this. So First Deputy Chief went out on his own. We get a train-the-trainer opportunity, and we self-train ourselves now. So our officers are being trained because that's how important it is. So that not only do we have our partners, but our officers on the scene understand and recognize. I also will reassure you, the officers who respond until we get the 911 triage set, they're ascertaining the situation. We will not send these folks into danger. If it's an individual that is threatening with a weapon, they are not going in until we can secure this scene. But then immediately after that, we're backing off.
And I want to add that we participate in the CIT training of the Syracuse Police Department. We teach some of those modules, and Sharon's right, SPD does such an amazing job of keeping us safe. Deputy Chief Trudell will often say that I need a cinder block placed on my foot to not run into danger, but he's there to put that cinder block on my foot. So they do an excellent job of keeping us safe.
Take off the heels.
I just want to say one thing. First of all, thank you all for this. This is amazing. And you really, in my opinion, are the poster child of what ARPA funds should really be used for. So I commend you. I almost wish you were asking for more. I wish you could do more right now. This is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your advocacy.
Thank you very much. All righty.
Thanks, President Hudson.
You're welcome, Councilor Hogan.
Very much. Did you, he's sick. Okay?
You didn't hear me say that earlier? I said earlier, I'm filling in for Councilman Joe because he's sick.